So there is a particular reason that I want Solo Leveling to do well. Solo Leveling is a Korean manhwa that's getting an anime adaptation for the Winter 2024 anime season. And if you don't know anything about it, I think a good quick description for it would be that it is a superpowered action shonen where a kid gets some superpowers and fights some monsters. Now normally I would just cover this in my most anticipated anime of the season video, but I wanted to have a solo video for Solo Leveling for 3 particular reasons. The first one is that I think this anime has a whole bunch of eyes on it already and, gotta get them views. The second is that the Winter 2024 anime season isn't going to be starting until 2024. And this series is going to be getting an early screening in early to mid-December 2023. So I wanted to get this video out there because I'm expecting that somehow that early screening is going to end up online somewhere. And thirdly, which is the thing that I want to discuss the most, is that I personally think that this series has a lot riding on it with regards to how well it's received by the anime community, and what I hope it being well received by the anime community could mean for the future of anime in general. So like I said earlier, Solo Leveling has a lot of eyes on it, and I think it's very fair to say that within the manhwa community, Solo Leveling is a very popular series. Right now it is a completed story. It has 179 chapters in the main story, and then 20 chapters for its epilogue. In and of itself, I think that the story is honestly quite standard. It is, for the most part, boy gets superpowers and fights monsters for the sake of the world type story. It is important to note though that that is not a bad thing. I think that similarly, Demon Slayer has a very standard story of boy rises up with powers, fights monsters, and saves the world. And I think that that is a great anime to watch. And I think just like Demon Slayer, Solo Leveling is very popular, not because it's doing anything super different, but that it is executing the things that it's doing very well, so that the series is more than just a sum of its parts. I think the cast within the story are all very enjoyable. There isn't really anyone that's super off-putting or particularly bad within the series. They all play their parts very well and end up in places that are satisfying for the viewer. I think the story itself never gets too convoluted, and the story beats themselves are paced pretty well and flow pretty nicely. Plus, I think all of the end of the arc payoffs hit in a very satisfying way. And with regard to the end of the arc payoffs, they usually lead into very satisfying action scenes, which are all really fun to read through, and I'm hoping hold up very well in the anime. And I think very importantly, the art style of Solo Leveling is very eye-catching. I think regardless of whether it suits your particular taste, it is on a technical level doing what it's supposed to do. And for me personally, I think that its showy style, its normal art style, and its comedic art styles all mesh together very cohesively throughout the story. And I think with its existing popularity, Solo Leveling is going to be brought to the forefront of the Winter 2024 anime season. And I think that this is both a good and a bad thing. Because with so many people talking up Solo Leveling like I have been for this whole video, I think that it's going to have that issue where compared to other anime in the same season, it's going to be scrutinized more heavily than usual, while any achievements that it does gain are going to be undervalued because it is such a hyped property. But hopefully that buff from being one of the more popular and talked about ones this season gets more eyes into the Korean manhwa scene in general. Because the reason that I want Solo Leveling to do well is not specifically so that Solo Leveling is seen as a amazing property. I want Solo Leveling to do well because I want there to be more eyes on the Korean manhwa series so that there's more chances for Korean series to get animes. I think in particular over the last 5 to 7 years, Korean manhwa have really started to pick up steam in terms of popularity. The fact that they're all in kind of webtoon formats where it's far more designed to read on your phone makes it a lot more digestible for, I think, a lot more people. And while I do still read a lot of Japanese manga in my week-to-week, with regards to my week-to-week anticipation for new weekly chapters, I'd say there's a pretty good 50-50 split of me anticipating both Japanese manga and Korean manhwa. And I think that it's really driven by the kind of freshness and variety that having a whole other country's take on tropes and genres that I've seen before added to my reading. And I hope that if Solo Leveling is able to make a big enough splash, it's going to entice more animation studios to look into bringing more Korean properties over and get these new takes on old tropes into anime. Because to my knowledge, a lot of Korean series that have already been adapted into anime are usually pretty easily comparable to things that are already out within the anime scene. I think God of High School really well followed the Dragon Ball progression of going from a fighting tournament to superpowered, world-shattering fights. And it's very loose, but I think that you can slot Lookism into a serious-ish slice of life and idol culture story. But even I'll admit that that is a very shaky example because Lookism's story, for everything that's going to come after season 1, I think just goes wildly into a different direction. But one in particular that I thought had a chance to fill the role that I want Solo Leveling to fill is Tower of God. And for those who don't know what Tower of God is, quite similarly to Solo Leveling, it is a very shonen-y style of anime which introduces Korea's take on the tower climbing genre. I know that a lot of manga have done tower climbing before, but I really think that Korean manhwa have really adopted that genre or world setting into its own kind of niche. But when I saw the Tower of God was getting an anime, I honestly really thought that would mean, within a year, Solo Leveling is going to get its anime. And when Tower of God didn't hit quite as hard as expected because of things like characterization and plot changes, some chunky pacing, and some rough animation here and there, I really got kind of concerned on how Solo Leveling would do and then how Solo Leveling would get handled. But like I said before, Tower of God falls into the Korean version of the tower climbing genre. And while I admit that the tower climbing genre isn't particularly one of my favorite genres, I really wanted Tower of God to do well because I wanted more of these tropes and genres to be brought over. But for Solo Leveling, it does contain a lot of tropes or genres that I enjoy. In particular, I think the big three for Solo Leveling would be the modern day Hunter Gate system, the system-based power system, and a spoilery third one that is related to the main character's power set that I am not going to go into. I genuinely think that for those three genres, Solo Leveling can be viewed in the same way that Sword Art Online is viewed with regards to the isekai genre. And by that I mean, it is not the first of its genre. It, based on your opinion, may not be the best of the genre, but it is very reasonable to say that it is the flag bearer of the genre, or the most mainstream popular entry point into that genre for the genre. And I think specifically the reason that I want Solo Leveling to do well is that I want more eyes on the modern day Hunter Gate world setting. Because a series that I really enjoyed in the past was Gate. And Gate is almost exactly what this genre is. In general, the outline for a Hunter Gate story is that one day portals or something similar opened up all over the world and eventually monsters start pouring out of the portals and causing havoc around the world. Somehow, related to these portals usually, people gained superpowers or magic tools or an equivalent and are able to push the monsters back into the portals or slay the monsters that have come out. Then these people begin pushing into the portals themselves, and they usually find new materials, new energy sources, and find a way to integrate them into the modern day world, creating new levels of technology, government, business, careers, and stardom. Commonly, most Hunter Gate stories always happen about 5 or 10 years after this initial event, when the world generally restabilizes and it becomes the norm. And honestly, other than the anime Gate and a series called A Gate open on my first day as a politician, I can't really think of any that happened more towards the start. I think that if you've watched my previous videos or listened to the podcast, you know that I am a piece of garbage and that one of my favorite genres is the isekai genre because it is so easy to consume stories within that genre because it is just such good junk food anime. And I think integrating a fantasy world with the modern day world is really the next logical step after isekai stories. Because why go to a whole new world to live out your power fantasy when you can do it in your existing one? And while this isn't always the case, I feel like in maybe like 80% of the stories, in a Japanese manga, the main character or main group of characters are far more kind and merciful and expecting their enemies to grow and become better people. Whereas in a Korean manhwa, I think they are far more likely to instead triumph over their enemies, rub it in their face, and then smear them into the ground. And for me and my bitter old man self, that is far more cathartic to see. And this old man bitterness kind of leads me to a pair of genres or world settings that I also would really, really love to see come over to anime. And if I haven't been butchering words up until now, I am about to butcher some new ones. Because these two genres are the Murim and the Jianghu. Now, while they're usually tied pretty closely together, they're not necessarily, from what I understand, the same. Murim is usually referring to a secret society of people who commonly it's that they have like some kind of hidden martial art or hidden power, and they are kept separate and secret from the normal everyday society. Stories within the genre aren't necessarily taking place at a certain time because it can kind of like slot itself into any time period. But it is very commonly linked to the Jianghu setting, which is basically a high fantasy version of ancient China. It's a world of martial arts, martial weapons, body cultivation, orthodox, unorthodox, and demonic sects and family fighting each other, dealing with each other, allying with each other, all while dealing with mythical beasts and magical abilities. And it is such a fun genre with a lot of its own tropes. And if you're into the whole kind of fantasy kung fu series, I think maybe the most popular example is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I honestly think that you could loosely say that the Avatar series could slot into these genres. The Hunter Gate and the Jianghu world settings are definitely some of the newest ones that I consider to be personal favorites of mine. And them still being kind of niche genres means that animated series for them are still very far away if they even have a chance of getting one at all. So I really hope that Solo Leveling is able to do well and bring that future date a little closer and make those chances of even existing a little bit better. Because all in all, I think Solo Leveling itself has a chance to be a very strong series, and I hope that the anime lives up to the potential that's being created by the manhwa. And if you weren't planning on checking it out already, I really hope that my rambling in this video makes you check Solo Leveling out. I also hope that, assuming you aren't already deep in them, that this video piques your interests in these world settings that I've already described. If you have any suggestions of series that you think that I might enjoy, drop them in the comments. If you have any genres that you think I should dive into next, drop them in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you want to get more videos like this, or listen to a video game and anime podcast, feel free to check out the rest of the channel. And if you like what you see there, consider subscribing. But regardless, thank you for giving this video a watch, and I hope that you come back again in the future, because this has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of trying to make you watch Solo Leveling.